It is another episode of the Juice on the Cuse podcast. Wes Cheng alongside Jim Stechschulte. Thanks so much for joining us on this Monday, February 3rd, 2025. We've got so much to talk about as always. We begin today with the basketball team. Jim, Syracuse salvaged their West Coast trip with a 75-66 win over California on Saturday. It was a rare road win for Syracuse, even rare for the team to get out to a hot start and play ahead the entire night. So, Jim, what do you think of that win in the California swing?
Yeah, I thought what you mentioned about the early start and playing with a lead for once was really important. I did note in my observations after the game that they were that was their second road win of the season. They only had 3 all of last year when they won 20 games, and I don't think either of us think they're going to get there this year without an improbable chain of events. We'll just call it. So I just think it's it's a positive. It's good for the guys to build on. It's good for the guys to build on. They can have that sense of confidence. I'm not saying they're going to jump out to a hot start against Duke on Wednesday, but but I think it's good to see them play well and to be able to handle that situation. Obviously, a couple sloppy turnovers at the end kind of made it closer than what was necessary. But at the same time, going to the free throw line and knocking down 8 straight free throws in the final minute to kind of put things on ice really was nice. Lucas Taylor played very well, led the team in scoring. And it's good to see that they just have to figure out to harness getting more consistent production of that sort, not just from Taylor, but from other players on the roster outside of JJ Starling, who they count on for scoring.
Yeah, Jim, I wanted to go back one game to Stanford. As you know, I was covering that game for the Juice Online from Press Row. So one note, and I know that we've been down on this particular Syracuse team, and we rightfully have the right to be so, but wanted to sound a little bit more optimistic looking forward here. And you've written about this, and I've said it here before, the transfer portal just wasn't kind to Syracuse this year. Sure. I think the individual players they got from the portal are all solid in some respects. You mentioned Lucas Taylor. You mentioned Eddie Lampkin has had nice spurts here and there. But I think overall, this wasn't the best portal class. And Jaquan Carlos, I think, has picked it up at times, but you can see his deficiencies as well. I think that actually changes after the season. I saw Syracuse general manager Alex Klein there, who, as you all know, was a longtime member of the Rivals team covering college basketball recruiting. And they didn't have a GM at this time last year. And I think the team was caught flat-footed by both McNamara leaving and the lack of someone focusing on personnel. So with someone handling that full-time, and Alex has been working the phones and understands who's coming in and out of the portal and his connections with all of the college sports agents, I do think that Syracuse is in a much better position when the season ends to lock in a better portal class. And what they're really going to need, given the class coming in, they're going to need a top flight point guard, and they're going to need a rim protecting center who's athletic enough to score on offense. I think those two needs are something that Alex will really help out a lot on. And having that general manager, I think, is a very underrated part of college sports as we know it now.
Yeah, the list, and I honestly think that's even like a partial list of, but you did highlight 2 of their biggest needs next year. When we've talked about it offline, I've specifically mentioned like an athletic shot blocking center. Their inability to defend at the rim has just been rough, especially since Freeman's injury. As you mentioned, Eddie Lampkin before, he's had a good season, but he's a flawed player. He's not a shot blocking deterrent. We knew this coming into the season. We were shocked at how
5 block shots all of last year, right?
Yes. But I agree with you that a point guard, and maybe not even a point guard, but just like a combo guard who can handle the load at point for, a significant part of the games, 20, 25 minutes, whatever it is good. I also think they would be well served to pick up a couple people who can shoot threes. These might be more role player types, more like we would just call them a 3-and-D, type player. Players who fit that mold, I think, would help to come in around the incoming class, just a couple established shooters to help create space, for all that's talented offensive players who are going to be in the program next year.
Yeah. So again, I think there's going to be mining of the portal, and there's going to be more mindful observations of that. And I think that's going to translate into a better season next year. And I do think every college coach deserves 3 years to run a program. And then we have to give Autry at least that. So that's my take on it. But Jim, we move on. You had a great column on Friday talking about Syracuse football's blueprint for success moving forward. In a nutshell, Ohio State won a national championship using a particular blueprint as it related to NIL and the portal. That's something that you've seen in Syracuse in this most recent recruiting cycle. Jim, let's dive into that a little bit more.
Sure. As if if you watched much of the college football playoff, I'm sure you undoubtedly, particularly in an Ohio State game, you heard how much that Ohio State had spent in NIL funds on their roster, which is $20 million. Off the top, Syracuse is not going to be spending
They're going to get $20 million to spend on the roster.
But it's not so much the amount of money, although that certainly helped, but the manner in which they used it. Ohio State used their NIL funds to retain players who were in their program. Guys, there's a lot of guys who came back for one more year or run to compete for a national title, and obviously it paid off. But what they were doing was taking guys who would have been second day, third day draft picks in the NFL, round 4 and on, guys who were not going to get gigantic signing bonuses to play. And basically they offered them a similar amount of money to what that signing bonus would be. And, because, hey, you still get a chance, you get to play another year and potentially win a title, and you're still going to be eligible for the draft. It's guys who are going to leave early to declare for and likely go in the latter half of the draft. So what they did basically was to establish quality experience depth by retaining these players. And that's something I see that it's possible that Syracuse is going to pursue for the football program behind Fran Brown. Obviously, much less active in the transfer portal this year than after last year when Brown first was named the coach. They've only brought in 6 kids and seen 11 leave, and they have 36 commits right now in their recruiting class. That's the core of how they're going to me, that's the core of how they're going to build up. Will all 36 kids hit? No. But having 36 kids in the class increases the odds that several will hit, just because it's strictly the numbers game. And with almost all of them being 3-star or higher players in recruiting ranking, the expectation is that several of them will hit, several of them will improve. We saw that, we had the question before the season: what was Fran Brown going to be as an in-game coach? They won 10 games, and they won a lot of one-possession games, and they weren't all nail biters where they came back from behind, and there were a couple where they had a bigger lead and then it slowly evaporated, but then they were able to hold on and put the game away. But that experience kind of shows that Fran knows what he's doing, and that should be able to go in with what makes me trust him more and what they're looking for in players, and what his overall plan is to develop a program. This is not to say that they're going to be national championship contenders next year or in 2 years or even 3 years. But I think what it is it's going to build up the program so we see more consistent results like we did this year. And maybe Syracuse turns into a perennial 9 to 10 win team and perhaps even eventually makes a playoff some year.
Yeah, so Jim, I agree with that. And I want to give a specific example of Steven Pickard Jr., who we're going to have on as our guest today. So he's a 2026 offensive lineman, originally from Syracuse, before he moved down to play at IMG Academy in Florida. So I think this is exactly the kind of guy you're referring to, because he's someone that Syracuse can really develop over time. And he's someone with roots in the area that understands playing for the Orange, understands playing in New York State. And I get to speak with a lot of recruits here at the Juice, as you know. And one guy that also fits this mold that I spoke with recently is 2028 athlete Jaden Bryan from Half Hollow Hills. So that's in Long Island. So I was talking to him about Syracuse being the first school to offer him. And he said he would, quote, love to play Division I football and stay in the state of New York, end quote. And again, I point out that Syracuse was the first school to offer him. And so you can see what Fran Brown is doing here. He wants to find players that he can develop. He has the opportunity to develop over a 3 to 4 year period, even the age of NIL in the portal. So he's going to develop guys that understand the system, that want to stay, that aren't just going to be looking immediately to the portal when they don't get a lot of playing time. And when those guys develop, and again, some of them are absolutely going to hit, they're more likely to stay at Syracuse. And then you have that quality depth that you're getting at 3, 4, 5 classes in that are perennially ranked in the top 40, which is something that Syracuse hasn't really seen before. So I think that's the blueprint. I think that's the blueprint you have to go to when you're a school that can't just dump 20, 25 million like a Florida State, like an Ohio State, like a USC. You have to be very careful with how you spend it, and keeping the guys that you have who know the system and who want to stay, I think is the best way to approach it.
Yeah, I think that being able, and I think it's going to be one of those things that kind of fosters its own building if that is what they end up doing, because guys, when they commit and they're young, and they will see guys who are ahead of them in the depth chart who stay here, and they will see them being offered a substantial amount of money to offer to stay. I'm not saying they're going to be offering guys millions of bucks to stay, but like if you see it, they will see, hey, if I stay here, if I develop, if I get playing time, if I improve, I can see that this is a pathway to me to get some of that, to be compensated for that financially while staying in this program. And if they're already here and like the atmosphere, like the coaching staff, like their teammates, all that kind of stuff, it kind of keeps almost like a funnel of developing these players towards all going towards that same developmental path in the same direction.
So we're going to take a quick break. 2026 commit Steven Pickard. When we return, this is the Juice on the Cuse podcast. This is the Bet Online read. The biggest betting weekend of the year is finally here, which means more updated odds and props for Super Bowl Sunday. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. We have hundreds of prop bets, MVP odds, and exclusive in-game live betting. Bet Online is your ultimate game day companion. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, Bet Online offers you everything and more to enhance your game day experience. Visit the website today and make game day action count a little bit more. Bet Online, the game starts here. We're back on the Juice on the Cuse podcast. Wes Cheng here with you. We are thrilled to be joined by 2026 Syracuse commit Steven Pickard Jr. Steven, really appreciate the time. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Nice day out. Got my work done. So, yeah, great day.
All right. Well, yeah, I want to get you started on this one. You're a Syracuse commit. You just committed earlier in January. So what made you decide to pull the trigger?
On the visit, I mean, everything was going great. And I just personally, what really made me want to do it is I just love Coach Brown. I love his energy. Like, he's just such a leader, great motivator. Like, I just love everything about him, you know?
Yeah, and I think another reason why, you and I have spoken before.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things that we talked about was you being a Syracuse native. That had to, I'm sure that played a factor in coming home and playing in front of your family and your home crowd.
Definitely did. Definitely. I was in Cuse. I was born in 2008, and then 2017 I moved down south, but Cuse has always still been my home at heart.
So what other connections do you still have in the area? And talk about some of the connections, with your parents and then with your family.
Yeah, so my dad still owns a business up there, and my mom graduated law school from Syracuse, so she's an alum. And then pretty much my entire extended family, for the most part, lives in Syracuse. All my uncles, aunts, grandparents, so that everyone's there.
So, I mean, anytime you play a home game, there's going to be a huge Pickard contingent in the crowd, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
So I want to talk about some of the coaches that you've been working with. Let's start with who's going to be your position coach, Coach Williams.
Mm-hmm.
When you met him, what did you guys talk about? And, what do you think of him?
Funny enough, we were actually talking about food, and but then we got into some more of the technical stuff. And I met him when I went on my first visit during Holy Cross that game, and then got to talk to him at Miami, and then more recently at my Prospect Day visit. So that was fun. I really like the stuff he's teaching. I'm excited to work with him, honestly. I think he's going to be great.
Yeah, and you see what things that Coach Nixon did with that offense. I mean, 4,776 yards through the air. You saw what LaQuinn Allen could do on the ground. When you talk to Coach Nixon, are those the things you talk about, really opening up the offense and you being a key part of blocking for that?
Yeah, we talked about kind of like the schemes they're gonna run and how they could see me, and I'm really excited to kind of get to run those all those plays, and watching that offense this year, because I watched most of pretty much every game. It was unstoppable. There was just movement, and then that Miami game when I was there, that was incredible to watch that offense go to work in that second half.
Yeah, so let's talk about that Miami game for a moment, because when they fall down 21-0, I think people are looking around going, uh-oh, I don't know what's about to happen here. And they ended up coming back to win. So what was that like for you, not only as a recruit, but just a fan in the stands to see that comeback and to hear the noise?
Yeah, it was crazy, actually. I was shocked. Like, I was like, man, they're in a tough spot right now, and then boom, now they're up. It's like, that's just like real football. That's like not putting your head down when you're down. That's why you need those guys that don't just give up when the score is like that. And it's crazy to see.
So I wanted to go back to your relationship with Coach Fran for a moment, because you said that one of the top reason you committed was because of him. So let's talk about some of the conversations you've had with him, what you think of him, and how much you're looking forward to playing with him.
We've talked about kind of my development and what I need to work on a little before I get to Cuse. He's been giving me some stuff so that I can be more of a fit for what they need, and really work towards what they can see from me in the future. We've talked about kind of the direction the program's going in, and we've talked about national championships. And personally, and I think he does too, want to win championships. That's what football's about, and I think there's a lot of that coming.
So you talked about a championship. That's definitely one of your goals at Syracuse. So
Definitely.
in the 3 to 4 years that you plan on being at Syracuse, how do you see that going? How do you see it playing out? And what give me some predictions for, I guess it would be 2029, 2020, 2030. Wow, that's pretty far into the future. But
Yeah.
4 years from now, we're talking, what do you see talking about?
I mean, by that time, I could really see Cuse even further in the powerhouse than it is. I mean, they finished 20th this year, which was great. I think by that time, you could see Cuse really up there, playing big, and really being that team that everybody talks about every year. Like, oh, I'm excited to see what they have going on with them. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I love that you're sporting a Syracuse sweater. You
Oh
see
yeah,
that I'm sporting my Syracuse hat, so we're
yeah.
we're doing pretty well here. So the last question I had for you is, tell me about the kind of offensive lineman you are. IMG Academy, that's a powerhouse in Florida, one of the best programs. They recruited you down there. They saw something in you. Obviously, Syracuse saw something in you. So
Yeah.
tell me about the type of lineman you are and the type of lineman you project to be.
So obviously I'm a pretty big dude. I'm 6'5", over 300. I'm weighing in at around 312 right now. I can really just like move people and drive them, and they get tired of me because I'm big. I hit them, and they don't want to play against me. Um, I have a high motor. I like to finish plays. So like a lot of those guys, they'll give up, and then boom, they're on the ground. So it's a great skill that I have, and I'm really thankful for that. I'm gonna try to work on my weaknesses and improve those, so I have just strengths all around.
Man, you're describing your size. I'm 6'1", 180. I would not want to get hit by you, Steven. Well, I appreciate the time, Steven. Really appreciate it. 2026 commit, Steven Pickard Jr. Welcome to Syracuse. Thanks for
Thank
coming
you.
on the program, and we'll definitely want to catch up with you soon. Take care.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me. You too.
Back on the Juice on the Cuse podcast, Wes Cheng alongside Jim Stechschulte. Jim, right at the end of our show, you got a closing thought for us?
I do. We spoke earlier about how this basketball season isn't turning out how we'd all prefer it to turn out for the Orange. They're currently 10-12 overall, 4-7 in the ACC, and mired in a four-way tie for 11th place. And we know that only the top 15 get into the ACC tournament. And while we're not expecting a drastic turnaround keyed by their win over Cal on Saturday, their schedule actually does lighten up down the stretch. They're not all going to be winners, of course, but they do have games as follows. They will be home against Boston College, who they've already beat. They'll be at Miami, who's 1-10 in conference and just got that first conference win. They have a home game against NC State, who's 2-8 in conference, and a home game against Virginia, who's 3-8 in conference. Close things up. They also have roadies at Virginia Tech, who's 5-6 in the ACC, and one at Pitt, who's 5-5 in the ACC, but who has already beaten the Orange in Syracuse. The point being, 3 home games and a game at Miami, and all 4 of those opponents are 3-8 or worse in the ACC. I'm not saying that the Syracuse is going to be a shoo-in and win all 4 of these games, but there is a chance that they can, and certainly a chance that they can win 3. I'm not saying that, we're all going to be throwing a party if they end up 14-17 at the end of the regular season and with 8 conference wins, but they can still do some things, make sure they get in the ACC tournament and maybe win a game there, depending on who they're playing. But the season's not over. They still have a chance to, frankly, double their win output in conference play at this point, so we'll see how they go without the schedules lightening up some, and maybe they can string some wins together in the last month of the schedule.
Yeah, Jim, let's see if they can just get through that Duke game and then look forward to the rest of the season when, again, as you said, things lighten up. And Jim wanted to close the show on Syracuse lacrosse, so they ended up topping Jacksonville, 24-5 on Saturday. They jumped out to a 10-0 lead, and the number 3 team in the country looked very impressive in its opener. Michael Leo saying after the game that Syracuse has really changed its approach after being knocked out early from the NCAA tournament last year. So that recruiting class of Joey Spallina, Billy Dwan, Alex English, among others, I think this is going to be a very big year for that class now that they're all juniors. They've been in the system for 3 years. They understand what it takes to win. I think this is going to be a pretty special year for Syracuse. We'll just have to see how it goes. That's it for us. For Jim Stechschulte, this is Wes Cheng. You've been listening to the Juice on the Cuse podcast presented by Believe in Rivals, and we will see you next time.